I'm City Council President of the City of Coeur d'Alene. I chair the Enough is Enough Committee in Coeur d'Alene, and I chair the statewide Drug Task Force for the Association of Idaho Cities, and I sit on the Alliance Committee for the Access to Recovery Idaho Grant. So I work with this stuff a little bit. How I got into it, kicking and screaming all the way in 1999. God kept saying to me, I want you to do this. And I kept saying, no, not going to do it. I'm going to ignore this, just like everybody else. And he hit me on the head finally one day hard enough that I got into it to bring a fellow named Milton Crea to Coeur d'Alene. A fellow councilman of mine at the time, Chris Kopstead, said, I'll help ya. And we decided we'd organize all of Idaho north of St. Mary's. Bring Milton Crea, and we'd do this, and it'd be all done, and we'd make a big difference. And
he was good.
He was good, and it was a very good beginning. And from there, my life seems to have been directed to keep on with it. And personally, I lost my only brother at the age of 42 to alcohol and drug abuse. It was prescription drug abuse, though. So back then we thought maybe that was okay. That was in 1979. But he's dead. Dead is dead. It doesn't make any difference whether it's prescription drugs or homemade methamphetamine. Dead is dead. I've never met one person whose life, in this last 6 years, whose life has not been affected in some way by substance abuse. Everybody has somebody in their family who has abused alcohol, tobacco, or drugs.
What is the stat on that? Do you know the stat?
Well, I don't know the stat. I know the stat for undisclosed, for untreated substance abuse. 1 family in 4 has someone in their family who has not been treated for substance abuse that needs it.
Families seem to be a very important part of prevention and rehabilitation, and it's a problem that we have in this state. I'd like you to address families in general.
Let me tell you a story. When I first got into this, I would go to the schools probably twice a year with one of the U.S. attorneys from Boise. His name is Monty Stiles. And we would talk to 4th graders. He would tell them about drugs, show them a really good slideshow that was geared to their age group. Then afterwards, we'd talk to the kids. You know, little 4th graders always want to talk. They want to give you their story. We were at one of the elementary schools this one day, and little girl, she had long brown hair. Her name was Jolene. She hung back from the other kids, and I noticed there were tears rolling down her cheeks. And I put my arms around her. After Monty had talked to all the other kids, he said, honey, what's the matter? And she said, I don't have a mommy. Well, who do you live with? With my grandma. I don't have a grandpa. Where's your grandpa? Grandma sent him away because he drinks. My mommy's in prison. She's going to come home pretty soon, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid of my mommy. My daddy's going to come home from prison too, and I'm really afraid of him. 4th grade. Shouldn't happen.
Do you think that's pretty prevalent?
Yes, I'm afraid it is. She was the first one I held in my arms, not the last. I don't do that anymore.
Kind of breaks us down, doesn't it?
I can't do that anymore. She was 10 years old then. I often think about her, and she must be 16 now. Where is she? What happened to her? Is she okay? I don't know. So it's for the Jolenes. I do this. And your question, how important is family? There's 3 things I need in my life. I need God, my family, and to dig in the dirt. If you don't have a family, what is your base? Where are you grounded? Who tells you you're okay? Who loves you? Who prays for you? You're lost.
What do we do as a community, Dixie, to be able to tackle this problem?
That's the big question. If I knew the total answer to it, we'd all be okay, Tim. I don't know. I know that it can't be solved by law enforcement, by the schools, by education. It can't be solved by any one group. It takes a community. It takes all of us to band back together and change the social norm. Right now it's socially acceptable to not have a family, to come to divorce, it's socially acceptable, for heaven's sakes, to go to prison. It's acceptable to abuse substances, to abuse all forms of drugs. We accept that because about 10, 20, 25, 30 years ago, we were taught that if it makes me feel good, it's okay. If I'm not affecting you, you have no right to tell me what to do. And we accepted that as a society. Bad mistake. Bad mistake. Because everything you do affects me. Good, bad, or indifferent. And everybody now has to stand up and say, this isn't right. Substance abuse is not right. And if the only thing we can do is look at somebody and say, what you're doing is not right, stop it. That's a beginning.
I agree.
And in order to conquer this problem and to get our society healthy again, our churches have to preach against substance abuse in the pulpit. And curiously enough, that's one of the hardest nuts to crack, because lots of times the pastor won't say anything about substance abuse. They'll talk about abortion, they'll talk about divorce, they'll talk about anything except substance abuse, because they're afraid they're going to offend someone in their congregation and they'll go down the street. If the ministers in their pulpits look out into their congregation and start that 1, 2, 3, 4, they'll understand what their problem really is. And the faith community should play such an important role in bringing our families back together and changing this social norm. They need to step up to the plate, as does the business community, city government, county government, state and federal government, law enforcement. We've left law enforcement and education hanging out there a long time by themselves. This is a law enforcement. Police, fix it. When that didn't work, it was, okay, teachers, you fix it. Well, didn't work. We all have to step up to the plate. We need to have drug-free workplaces where you can safely go to work and not be worried about the guy next to you being impaired with some type of alcohol or drug problem and not doing his job, or creating an accident that you may be involved in. We've got to do all of those things. You know, not many things is Idaho #1 in the nation, but Idaho per capita kills more people on their highways from alcohol-related accidents than any other state. Not something to be very proud of, but we do it.
Do you think a lot of people are in denial over the drugs and alcohol
Sure.
in our city and in our
Sure,
state?
sure.
Do they not want to see it, or?
I think people who aren't involved in substance abuse don't want to see it. If it doesn't affect me right now, then I don't want to know about it because I don't know how to fix it. It's somebody else's problem. If it's a problem in my family, then I probably still want to hide it. I don't want to address it. I'd rather ostracize the person who's having the problem than to try and help them fix it. And if I try and help them fix it, where do I go for help? Where do I go? We're only treating in Idaho right now 25% of the need. And in Coeur d'Alene, In Kootenai County, if we want treatment, often we have to send our people clear to the southern end of the state to get it.
Do you feel that the community's rising up at this point? You said there's a little bit of passion that's starting to go behind it. Do you feel that the community's rising up to help with treatment and prevention, for that matter?
We've got a little bump. We're coming up. We're getting the awareness out there. Is it rising up as a whole community yet? No.
And yet, are we pouring a lot of funds into this?
Sure, we pour a lot of funds. You know, that's what we do. That's what we do. If we have a problem, we throw money at it.
Well, the recidivism rate in the state of Idaho is extremely high, which means if you get out of prison, you'll probably go back to prison. The average person that's in prison right now has been there 10 times, or the jail system. So we keep pouring a lot of funds into this. What's it going to take to try to drop that recidivism rate? Do you think it's going to take the families, or is it going to take the community,
It's
a
going
whole
to
village?
take the community. It's going to take the faith. The faith community is huge in it. It's absolutely huge.
Why do you say that?
Because recovery is something that the faith community can really be involved in. One of the, you talked about recidivism. Yeah, there's recidivism because one of the reasons is because we do not provide proper treatment in the state of Idaho. A meth of someone who's addicted to meth, it can take years to treat them. We give them 4 days. We'll dry you out in 4 days and then goodbye, we'll see you.
And
That's
the
all we
expense
give
of them 4 days is extremely high, if I'm correct.
It is extremely high. Health and Welfare's budget for the state of Idaho for treatment is right at $10 million a year for the whole state. If we truly love each other and if we want to make a difference, we accept everyone. I don't care if they're green or blue or black, whether they've got 1 arm or 2 arms, whether they go on their 2 feet or in a wheelchair, whether they abuse drugs or not. And if they abuse drugs, that signals to us they need help. And if you need help, traditionally, where do you go?
God.
You go to God in your church. So I would say to the churches, to the ministers in the pulpits, across the state, across the nation, next time you're in that pulpit, look at your congregation and start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4.